I'm Lauren Conlin, and welcome to Pop Crime TV's The OUTLIER podcast. Today, I'm getting back into the alleged suitcase killer, Sarah Boone. This is a part 3. So I'm going to pick up where I last left off, and then I'm going to get us all the way up to the day of October 18th, which is right smack in the middle of the prosecution presenting their case in chief. That's right, Sarah Boone's trial is underway, and it's wild. I first want to shout out to Gretchen BIERENBAUM, my researcher writer, for doing an amazing job with this episode. Gretchen, you are the best. If you want to follow Gretchen, all of her info is in the episode notes. All right, where did we last leave off with Sarah Boone? Well, we are picking up after we all marveled at her handmade flyer seeking an attorney, and to the surprise of just about everyone, Sarah was able to find someone to take her case in early September. The lucky 9th attorney to become involved in Sarah's case is a man named James Owens. Owens was once a public defender. He now has a private practice where he's been practicing criminal defense for over 20 years, and he's handled over 100 jury trials. Now, the big detail about Mr. Owens stepping in to take the case is that Judge Cranick denied the request for more time to review the case. So the judge stated that the trial would take place October 7th as planned, and now we all know that, or maybe we don't know, but I'm pointing it out, that the date was actually pushed back a week due to the hurricane in the area in Florida. And then jury selection was finally seated on October 17th. So it wasn't pushed back so Mr. Owens could get more time. It was pushed back due to weather. So Mr. Owens subsequently motioned for more time to review the case any chance he could, and again, all motions were denied. During these early days of Mr. Owens' onboarding, he did add some additional help from other attorneys, and these attorneys are named Tony Henderson and Kevin Beck. Tony Henderson, he's been practicing criminal law for over 25 years, and he's tried over 250 jury trials. And then Kevin Beck, there's not much information about him, but he has been practicing federal crime and criminal law for over 35 years in St. Petersburg, Florida. So no one is certain how and if these folks are being paid. There was a really weird statement made outside of the courthouse by Mr. Owens to the press, and the press was asking if he was doing this pro bono. And he said, "Not doing it pro bono, Sarah owes me." I thought that was really, really weird. And it's in the episode notes as well if you want to look that clip. It was just really, really strange. So someone has to be paying these guys for their time. I'm just not sure. And I don't know why I'm so bothered by it, but these guys aren't public defenders. So that's why I'm just very curious. So all this help from lawyers has made Sarah seemingly happy, which we know is very difficult. She's very temperamental. So the buzz around the true crime community here is focused on how long will it be before Sarah Boone fires Mr. Owens. Followers of this case are no strangers to how quickly Sarah can turn from happy to completely dissatisfied. During one day of the trial, Judge Cranick directly asked Sarah if she was happy with her representation and counsel, and Sarah said yes. That is something right there. If the judge has to look at the defendant and be like, "Hey, are you happy?" Sarah and her legal team have certainly made some interesting requests of the court. She has asked for 10 different outfits to wear during her trial. On day 1, she was told she could not wear high heels. That day, she had to wear her jail slides and was very mad about it. But now she wears dress flats with her court outfit. And this is crazy, guys, she also requested someone to do her hair and makeup each day before court. Mr. Owens argued hard for such beautification that he's basically cited it was part of a fair trial. I find that to be very interesting. In my experience in watching these trials, usually they want the defendant to look kind of rough, like they're having a hard time in jail and that they're innocent and desperate. But hey, what do I know? I'm not a lawyer. So ultimately, the hair and makeup request was ruled out by the judge, stating, quote, after speaking with an official from the Orange County Sheriff's Office, the judge denied the motion for cosmetics and hairstyling due to law enforcement concerns that the makeup could be considered contraband when Boone is returned to jail from court each day. End quote. He approved the part of the motion for civilian clothing, though, which we knew. The next odd request made by Sarah through her legal team was the fact that she wanted permission to go to the commissary once she returned back at the jail after court at 9 p.m. at night, and her requests were very specific. She asked for 5 peppermints, 2 juice packs, 2 bags of chips, a bag of candy, and either a Pop-Tart or a bag of cookies. I mean, this is crazy. She's on trial for second-degree murder, but yeah. Mr. Owens once again gave this request his all when speaking to the court by assuring them that these snacks will, quote, help keep Sarah awake and that she doesn't have, quote, high blood pressure. And ultimately, and not surprisingly, Judge Kranick said no. So many trial watchers have noticed that Sarah seems to feel very at home sitting at counsel's table with her lawyers. She's taking notes nonstop, and she seems to motion to Mr. Owens when she has a point she wants to share. Very, very involved. And on the second day of jury selection, along with the last-minute motion hearings, Sarah stood up at the lunch break and was forced to snap back to her reality that she wouldn't be walking freely out of the courtroom and attending a nice lunch with her defense team. Sorry, Sarah, you don't get sympathy here. You're in jail based on your actions that took place the day that Jorge Torres' life was taken, and the chains and the cuffs belong on her wrists and her waist as long as the jury is not in the room. That was really interesting, that little moment where she stood up and she just kind of forgot, like, oh, hey, I'm going to lunch. No, you're not. Now, this next part is big. Prior to the trial kicking off, on October 7th, Sarah Boone rejected a plea deal from prosecutors that would have sent her to 15 years for pleading guilty to manslaughter. Sarah has already served 5 years at this point in time. If she's found guilty, she faces a minimum of 22 and a half years in prison or a potential life sentence. So she's already served 5 years. She'd just have to serve 5 more at the most. And look, if she could be out on good behavior, I mean, who knows? So she rejected that plea deal. This decision left many of us scratching our heads. I was so angry at her lawyers for not pushing this on her. I don't even know how to react. I can't believe it. I mean, we have footage of Sarah zipping Jorge Torres. I mean, it's insane. Sorry, maybe not zipping him, but laughing at him, cursing at him, slurring her words and not letting him out. And there's more, and we'll get there. But Mr. Owens and his team have brought forth a motion to use battered spouse syndrome in order to defend Sarah's actions. And I talked about this in my first episode. They have had police reports filed against each other, but they both seem to be guilty, in my opinion. I don't think Jorge is more abusive than Sarah here. And I don't know if it was always physical. It did sometimes get physical, but look, I'm going to get there, but something I didn't know that I realized in the prosecution opening statement is that Jorge Torres weighed 103 pounds. Yeah, 103 pounds. If I had to guess, I would say Sarah weighs a good 20 to 30 pounds more than that. And that's not a dig. I'm not commenting on her body, but 103 pounds is nothing, especially for a man. Now, battered spouse syndrome that she wanted to use, this defense, it was ruled that the defense could only use BSS in their opening statement and during the jury voir dire. Now, during the argument of this motion, the state pointed out that there was no overt act that took place to cause Sarah to kill Jorge, meaning he didn't threaten her with a gun and then she's like, oh, I'm going to zip you in a suitcase to save my own butt. No, didn't happen. So the defense reluctantly claimed that the overt act was that George's fingers were poking out of the suitcase and he was sure to get out. And once he did, he was bound to kill Sarah. That really upsets me. That guy, there was no shot of him getting out. If you heard that video and I played it, go back to episode 1 and 2 of Sarah Boone. I mean, my gosh. And you know what? I'm going to link those 2 episodes out in the notes. So if you didn't listen, you definitely should go back because, yeah, that wasn't about to happen. So it seems in order to get the BSS into witness testimony is to have Sarah explain the so-called overt act on the stand. So apparently Sarah Boone is planning to take the stand in her own defense in a narrative format. I can't believe it. I don't think this is a good idea, but this means that the testimony will not flow how a typical deposition flows with questions and short answers, typically yes, no, I don't recall. The narrative will have the witness telling their own story, and there's ultimately no way to control that as the witness is speaking. So just to put this in perspective, if you followed the Robert Tell's trial, who was on trial for killing the journalist in Las Vegas, he took the stand in his own defense in the state of Nevada in this way earlier this fall. Let's touch upon now Sarah Boone's jury. What is the jury comprised of? There are 8 women on the jury, all Caucasian, between the ages of about 30 and 55 years old, and 6 males, 2 African American males, and 3 Caucasian males between the ages of 30 and 60. One of the jury selection days allowed the press to hear what was being asked of the jury pool, and it was really interesting to hear what sort of questions the judge was asking. Judge Cranick asked if anyone had close family who had ever been arrested or charged with a crime. Then he went on to call each of them who raised their hands and asked who the person was and what the charges were. All pretty standard so far. But then, after the person shared their information, the judge asked if they felt that person was treated fairly and then asked if the incident would keep them from having an open mind in this trial. So I had never heard this type and level of voir dire about the person being treated fairly or the person's opinion on the family member being treated fairly. I was reporting to jury duty, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and they asked stuff like this. Did you have a family member or do you have a family member that committed a crime? Yes, no. Okay, cool. End of story. They never asked, did you think they got a fair trial? But I think this gives a deeper perspective into how Judge Cranick is with how the case is being structured. The need for an appeal should be very small based on the way he has been certain to entertain all of Sarah's requests and her legal team motions on top of the transparency with jury selection. And here we are. It's Monday, October 21st, and on Friday, October 18th, we wrapped up day 1 of opening statements and witness testimony, and it feels like the state is flying through their witnesses very, very quickly. During the state's opening statement, that's where I learned that Jorge Torres only weighed 103 pounds, and I was pretty shocked. And I don't know his exact height. I know he was 42 years old and only weighed 103 pounds, which, yeah, that's pretty concerning. But that's when I was like, wait a second. She seems like she could probably take him. And I know that sounds bad. I just feel like, guys, if you follow this trial, in my opinion, Sarah Boone, she just exaggerates, man. I'm so sick of it. I'm still in disbelief that she didn't take this plea. And just backing up a second, when she was making such a big deal about her wardrobe and her hair and makeup, I just want to point out that her first court outfit was literally navy blue, which is the exact same color as her jail scrubs. I legit could not tell a difference in her jail scrubs and her jail outfit. Also, I have seen so many women get very creative with makeup when it comes to their trial. I don't remember what show I was talking about this on, but there was a bunch of people in the chat and it was super helpful. And everybody was like, listen, when you're in jail, you use ballpoint pen as eyeliner, you use Kool-Aid packets to do lipstick and blush. And look, females do it. I mean, if you're a woman, you know that we are very intelligent and we get things done. So Sarah, suck it up and just figure it out. But just back to the first day of witness testimony, I mean, the state really is going fast. They interviewed Jorge Torres' brother. I personally thought that he wasn't the best witness for the state. I didn't quite understand why they brought him up there. He kind of just said he didn't have a relationship with Sarah, but he didn't really say anything too damning about Sarah either, just that the two were always arguing. And something that the defense pointed out during their cross was like, well, why didn't George ever stay with you or any of your siblings? Because I believe there was 5 siblings in the Orlando area. And then the defense went up there and, the defense said that. And then the state went up there and said, well, did George ever stay with your parents who live there? And then he said yes. Now, the other witness that I thought was actually incredibly damning to Sarah was a young man who lived next door to Sarah and George at the time of the murder. And he talked about this huge thud that he heard. And he said this thud, and this was the night that George was zipped in the suitcase. He said this thud shook his entire bed, and he was FaceTiming or Zooming with his girlfriend, and he moved, and she said, "What was that?" Well, we are now to believe that Sarah possibly threw the suitcase down the stairs. Not sure, but something is going on here. I don't think it's as simple as she just zipped him up, didn't let him out, forgot, woke up the next day, and there he was. No, I think that something is going on, and I think we're going to find out more this week. So the other witnesses, the officer who was first on scene and questioned Sarah, the detective that questioned Sarah at the station and searched her phone, ultimately finding the video that was made of George begging to be let out of the suitcase, and a few more witnesses on the state's list. So no crazy bombshells, I guess, have been dropped, but the questions have been just straightforward about Sarah's character or based on facts that can be supported by body cam footage. The only thing I think is interesting or that came out of Friday's testimony was the huge thud. I'm thinking that something happened with stairs or I don't know. I hate speculating, but we'll have to see. I just feel like something is off. Okay, I apologize for my little stream of consciousness at the end there, but I wanted to get something out about Sarah Boone as, again, her trial is underway, and I don't see a world where she is not found guilty. I think the big thing will be, what is her sentence going to be? But everybody should start to follow this trial. If you don't, it's really, really interesting. It's really sad for Jorge Torres. This is a horrific way to go. And before I forget, I believe something was passed where Sarah Boone is not able to make any money off of her likeness in this case. So she cannot make any money off writing a book about the quote-unquote suitcase killing. She can't make any money off a movie. She cannot make money off a podcast, nothing, which I was like, wow, that's pretty incredible. Because, I mean, think about how many people have been able to capitalize off of their crimes. I mean, the first person that comes to mind here, unfortunately, is Sammy Gravano, Sammy the Bull, mob guy who turned rat, who now has a podcast talking about openly killing people. But anyway, very, very different. All right, guys, if you like this podcast, don't forget to rate and subscribe on Apple or wherever you listen. I will be back this week with a few more episodes, and don't you worry, there will be another episode on Sarah Boone after a verdict is reached. All right, I'm Lauren Conlin. Thanks for listening.